Hey everybody, this is Time Rider, and I gotta tell you, when Paul over at Fat Guy Productions told me that this weekend was Mega Burger 2, I was so excited because I love a good burger. Hang on a second, Cody's trying to tell me something. Are you sure? You're sure? Never mind everybody, I guess it's Mega Build 2. Well, if I'm going to do a mega build, it's going to be the Actifisher Snow Track. Now, as most of you may know, I've already done one of these, so, I can't restore another one because it kind of, it is what it is. About all you could really do is paint it another color, right? I'll go past all the things about the guy who wanted to go fishing with his brother-in-law or something like that, and he invented it, and within a couple of years they were selling them to everybody, including the military, and wait a minute. The military. I kind of like that thought. Well, in my research I found out that the snow track was actually used for a lot of things. Not to mention that it had a cameo appearance in the movie The Shining. But the more I looked, the more I found that the military did indeed use the snow track, and I finally settled on this example as the muse for my build. Now, I'm not going to try to recreate this exactly, but I'm going to come up with a reasonable facsimile, so stick around. So basically, the snow track came from Lesney three ways. With the snow track decal, with a plain side, and with one that's cast into the side. This one happens to be a 1964-1965, and I always believed the snow track was a staple of the Matchbox family. So if you're queasy, you're probably going to want to turn this off. The casting was held together with a single post in the front and a tab in the back. It's actually a really good sturdy casting. Comes apart and there's not a lot to it, just an interior glass piece, the body, the chassis, and the bogie wheels and whatnot. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward operation. All I needed to do with this, at least with the body portion, was drop it in that primordial ooze. Give it a shake for luck. The base had 3 axles, 2 of which were exposed on the bottom, 1 of which is not. So I need to get these runner wheels off. I believe it's painted silver. I know it's painted silver, although I'm not going to paint it silver. Again, I was fortunate in that the tow hook was intact. A lot of times they're broken off or bent, and you break them off when you're trying to straighten them. But in this case, it just had an intact one. And, of course, it was missing the tracks. They always are. I don't have enough money to afford one that still has the original tracks on it. So we're going to drop this chassis into the stripper as well. And move forward. And if you've ever seen the movie Independence Day, here's the icky part. If you're one of those people that doesn't like watching what I do or George does with a jeweler's saw, then you should probably fast forward or turn it off, because cut. And there you can see the little piece that I had left once I had all of my cuts done. And I needed to clean up my cuts just a little bit because I want nice, flat, properly configured edges. I mean, if you're going to cut it, at least do it respectfully, right? And we're going to clean all the remaining ooze out of Those bogey wheels that are cast into the side of the chassis. And there's our fully prepared casting. And I noted that I had to straighten those ears, and I also noted that these military ones, that wasn't open on the side. They had like metal railings. And they didn't even have flat tabs on the end. But I figured I would do my best to approximate it using my hand drill and a paper clip. And you can see I have a little hole in the roof there too. In case you're wondering, I'm going to be making some accessories for this. But the hole in the roof is where I'm going to put a gun mount. And I got these holes drilled. So yeah, I'm going to put a railing on the side, and then I'm going to make some equipment out of this styrene, and it'll fit between the railing and the side of the chassis. And of course I gotta have something inside of it. I just can't have it open. So I need to know how big that opening is. And there you go. So I cut a strip of this, it's like Tread-Brite styrene. I cut a piece the appropriate width, and then it's really thin, so holding it down turned out to be more of a challenge than I thought. But I got there eventually. Might not be straight, but I'll fix it later. I just needed it to fit inside of this opening, and I thought that the Tread-Brite would look cool as a floor. And using some of that squared styrene, I made benches for the side and the start of what is going to be a dashboard on the front of it. There you go. I think that'll work. So I was making some little accessories to put on the side of it. And I want them to be, fairly straight. And one of them is going to be kind of a gas can, so I wanted the corners of it to be somewhat rounded. They're going to fit right on the sides there. I don't know whether they're going to be up front or in the back. I'm just kind of playing around here to see where I might want to put them. Now it's time to get into the paint booth, and I'm going to paint the chassis with Duplicolor flat black primer. And the body is going to be painted with Duplicolor white sandable primer. So I know a lot of people don't like it when I hack these things apart, but I just want to say that, if you're going to cut something apart like this, I get it. It's really old, but, it ain't the Hope Diamond. I'm buying like Sanford & Son. But that doesn't mean that if I'm going to do this, I don't want to treat my end result with respect. And I bring that up here because I really worked very hard to make these rails as straight as they could be. I don't know if you noticed when I was testing it out, the one was kind of, a little wonky here and there. But if you're going to cut these things up and make something else out of them, then you have to do it respectfully. And I'm not saying that, like I see these guys do post-apocalyptic stuff. That's not my thing. I'm not saying that's bad, so don't blow up my feed. All I'm saying is if you're going to do that, then do a good job of it. Sir Martin, he's right. They're never going to be perfect, but to aspire to perfection, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm using this Q-tip because that Star Bond is really thin, and although it conforms really well, I'm just trying to soak up any excess that might be there. So if I'm going to make an interior, I got to make a place for a guy to sit. And I tried cutting up a Matchbox interior to see if I could get a seat out of it. And I just thought, for one thing, military seats are so utilitarian. I don't need anything elaborately fancy. It just has to have a straight back. And it's probably got vinyl on it, and if anything, maybe even metal, just down to the metal. But I just need a seat. I'm just using a little bit of the Tamiya glue designed to be used with plastic. I went into my junkyard, and this is actually... I had a guy send me an email. He needed a trunk for a Rolls-Royce 24C, I think it is. And I had one that had been severely cut by whoever owned it before me. So I gave him the trunk, but I always save everything. And this is the interior of a Rolls-Royce. So this Snow Track is going to have a Rolls-Royce steering wheel. I love this little hand drill. I bought it at Amazon. Nope, there's not going to be a link. If you go to Amazon and search for hand drill, you'll find something just like that. I use it all the time. And this is Bondic. I was using Bondic still. I am now using a different ultraviolet sensitive resin, but that's resin is resin. And I used that to make the dashboard. And it works great because you can dry it immediately and begin cutting on it and shaping it and doing whatever it is that you have to do to it. I use my little cordless one to drill a pilot hole a lot of times as well. Hey, Bob's your uncle. It's got a steering wheel. A little bit of resin to hold it in. And then, like I said, it's really good for shaping like I'm doing here. And it's not going to turn out perfect because it's so small. But it won't be too bad. Now, I know people talk about, or maybe they don't, I shouldn't say they talk about it. I know I've talked about painting white on white. And this is Tamiya flat white on a flat white surface. So it's really a challenge to get it painted. You got to look at it from different angles so you can see where the wet portions are. And that's about the only way that you can paint it. But if you pay attention, you wind up with this end result. I think this looks pretty good. And then the camouflage, I just thought, I can probably just do that by hand. It's an airbrush, and even though it's a single action airbrush, you just don't open the valve very much, and you maybe turn the pressure down just a little bit closer to the object that you're painting than you might normally be, and you can freehand some pretty decent camouflage. I really enjoyed doing this. It was I had been trying to think of a way to do a custom on one of these for kind of a long time. And, of course, this is one of the obvious customs is to paint them camouflage, and I've seen them done. But I don't think I've ever seen anybody cut on one like this. And I don't know if that makes me a bad guy or a good guy, but I personally think it makes me a creative guy. So I told you all that I was going to make a gun mount. And if I'm going to make a gun mount, then I guess I'm going to need a gun. So I'm just using some axle sleeving and a little bit of that styrene in my drill. And I'm going to try to approximate an old M50. Whether I succeed or not, I guess, is an entirely different matter. Not too bad. I did do a little bit of kind of sculpting on the side. I don't know how successful that was. You can look at it in the reveal because I didn't really film it, but I just needed to drop a star bond. So I also figured that if I was going to open the top like this, I mean, the military wouldn't just drive around like that. They would have some type of an apparatus, like my the one that I did the Muse on. They would have some type of an apparatus to hold their canvas roof. So that's kind of what I'm doing here, is making a hoop for the back. And again, you know, I want those bends to be, I don't want them to be sloppy. I want them to look good. Now, one of my subscribers referred to this as a punt, and I hadn't heard that term for many, many years. I used to work in a liquor store, and most wine champagnes will have a punt in the bottom of the bottle. But this, I believe that this makes it much easier to use a hammer on axles, because it creates, you're not trying to flatten off a flat thing, you're just trying to roll over the edges of a depression. So I have to deal with this glass too. Unfortunately, it's green. I do deal with that to some degree, but I have to cut it. And clean up that flashing. We can't have that. I taped over the face of it, and what this is it's actually rattle can or aerosol Tamiya smoke. And I didn't load up the airbrush because, boy, that stuff out of the can is really thick, and I really wanted to darken it. I'm putting a coat of primer on the interior here. I have to apologize. I don't have the footage of my final creation of the interior, but I'll explain it in the reveal when I get to that point. I used Tamiya Flat Clear. I believe it's X85 or 86. When you're using the semi-flat or semi-gloss and flat clears in Tamiya, be sure you shake them really good before you use them, because they have something in them that will settle to the bottom. And then that's just pledge after I had put several coats of the Tamiya smoke spray on the inside. I wanted it dark, but I wanted it to still have some translucence to it. And of course, you know, cover it so it doesn't get all dusty. The canvas top I just made by rolling up a little piece of paper towel. I didn't video it, and then I actually dipped it in the pledge, and because it's just, it's floor wax, so it kind of stiffened it. It acted like a starch, and I formed it over that block. I purposely did not need it to be exactly perfect along the edges, because if you had tarp, it would probably not do that anyway. It would be kind of at a little bit of an angle like this is. I painted it with flat white Tamiya paint, And then I wanted it to have a camouflage look, but I didn't want it to look like it was painted black. So I used tire wash, and this white paint is still wet because I wanted it to look like canvas. And over time, canvas would fade and it would bleed a little differently. It would just look different, but try to look the same at the same point in time. Hammer, 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 hammer. And then we're going to go back to where I started with this. See how well that works? And yeah, I have this up at about 400%, but it really works well. I love those black tracks. I found them on eBay. It's an interesting casting, and this one was, had certainly seen better days. I did have to straighten the front. You can see it's bent just a little bit. I didn't show that. And then you can see that back portion where the, I don't know what you call it, the shelf is bent. I had to straighten that. This was not the job I was supposed to put up this weekend, so if you stick around for the bench, you'll see why I did this as opposed to what I intended to do. That said, let's take a look where I wound up. I think it looks really good. The gun might be a little too big proportionally, I don't know. The interior I painted with Mr. Hobby paint called Iron, that if you rub it with a Q-tip, it gets kind of a worn look to it. You see my little fire extinguisher I put in there. There's a little toolbox here on this side. I just put a little hunk of paper clip, super glued it on the top to make, assimilate or create a handle, shall we say. I think the tarp itself turned out really well. This side I put a little fuel can. But there you have it, my idea of how one would customize the Matchbox number 35B Snow Track. So stick around for an episode of The Bench. This is Time Rider, and I'll leave the light on for you. Hey, thanks for sticking around for this edition of The Bench. Say, I don't know if I had shown you guys this casting before, but I bought it actually at the Dollar General for, call me crazy, $1. I just thought that it was a really well done casting. I mean, a lot of times the stuff you see nowadays, some of it gets to looking kind of cheesy, but this almost reminded me of what Lesney might have done back in the 60s. So anyway, on the I hope you find this interesting front, I hope to have this casting ready for next weekend, and what I'm doing is I'm taking a casting which is already actually pretty doggone beautiful, and I'm going to try to make it more beautiful yet, so stick around for that. I had mentioned that I was actually going to put a different video up today, and what I was going to do was this Matchbox Jaguar Mark 10, and you can see that the glass is broken, and I ordered glass and it doesn't fit. And this is the second piece of glass that I got that when I look at it, clearly the glass looks to be too thick and I can't get it to settle into the casting. Now, I'm not 100% sure where I got it because I buy from a lot of places, so I'm not going to say who. But in my own mind, I'm about 99% sure where I got it, and I probably just won't order from that outfit any longer. And of course, I started working on my Three Blind Mice build for December, the Grand Prix Invitational. I know what I'm going to do, and right now we have a list of people who are going to participate. If you don't see your name on the screen at some point, just let me know. I am an old man, and I forget, and I usually get people emailing me and Paul and whomever. I already know what I'm going to do with this. Right now I just got her down to a clean casting, so I can start filing body lines and all that good stuff. And then the version that I got, look at that girl. Talk about poor quality control. I'm going to have to contend with that somehow. You know, that a big chunk of the grill is just missing. But, you know, that's the challenge of it, right? I'll figure it out. And as I'm sure I've probably told you, you know, the Three Blind Mice, we take turns picking castings. This is the one that Paul picked for January, this X-Men Nova panel. It's a Hot Wheels. It's really a good casting. It's got a metal base. It's really well put together. I kind of got an idea what I want to do with it. And I actually picked the one after that. And I picked the Flash Cider, so my turn is February. And I know that's a long way off. But I've got this Hummer, and I'm thinking about maybe doing something with that. For the February build. And then I've also got this Hot Wheels, I believe it's an Angelia is how it's pronounced, that I think would make a really interesting project too. So why don't you make a comment below if you think one is better than the other, and I'll probably put something on my community page too, just for the hell of it. And that being said, this is Time Rider. I hope everybody has a great weekend. My beloved Vikings are not playing today, but with any luck, I can watch the Redskins beat up on the Lions. And this is Time Rider. Everybody be good, be safe, and I'll see you next time.